someone else will. How to talk to your teen about sex. Tomorrow on CBS This Morning with Harry Smith and Paula Zahn.
And with us now, New York Congressman Charles Schumer, who is also the chairman of the House Subcommittee on Crime and Criminal Justice, and Wayne LaPierre, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Rifle Association. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. Let me ask you first, Congressman Schumer, about the New York incident. I understand you're going to hold hearings next week on terrorism. Do you think that there's some law that could be tightened or something that could be done from a national standpoint to make it more difficult for something like this to happen?
I think we're going to have to re-examine a whole bunch of different laws, Bob, because we now see that international terrorism has a domestic face. Let me just mention two right off the top. One is the way people can come into the country. Right now, if you get on an airplane and claim asylum on that airplane, rip up your papers, say you don't have papers, when you arrive, say, at Kennedy Airport in New York, they will say to you, okay, we'll give you a hearing on whether you deserve asylum, show up in a year. And two-thirds of the people never show up. Our borders are much too porous, and we want to keep them open, but we also have to be much more careful. Another thing that should change is putting what's called taggants, identifying little bits of information in all explosives. If that were done, they could have traced immediately the explosives that were used in the bomb that was in the World Trade Center. There are a good number of things, a long list, that can be done. In fact, my subcommittee is examining legislation to do those. We're in a new world.
All right, well, let me ask you, Mr. LaPierre, now, do you think there are any laws that ought to be changed or strengthened to prevent something happening like happened down in Waco this week?
Absolutely. No one wants to stop the violence more than the National Rifle Association, but the politicians have been underfunding our criminal justice system for years. Prisons, courts, prosecutors, you name it. And what that has resulted in, 38 states are under court-order release prisoners, over 120 localities, 98 out of 100 felons never go to jail. In states like Texas, you serve 1/10 of your sentence. 50% of the aggravated rapists are put out on probation without ever going to jail in Texas. Someone drives by a high school in Washington, D.C., shoots a couple kids on a playground in the afternoon, he's back out on bail that night. The NRA wants to put criminals in jail and keep them there, not prevent honest people from owning firearms.
All right, well then what should be done about the fact that a group can assemble, what is it, 8,000 pounds of ammunition and scores of automatic weapons in one place?
The problem is people are never prosecuted to violate the gun laws. Felons are not prosecuted that have firearms. It's against the law for someone to carry a gun and sell crack to kids on the street. But we have no jail cells because of the underfunding from the politicians of our criminal justice system, so they can't take anyone off the street. If they get those guys in Texas, they ought to put them to death. But because they won't tighten the habeas corpus laws, they'll have endless appeals that go on for years, and then probably they'll be paroled back to the streets.
Well, we have a prominent politician right here with us. Is there anything wrong with that argument, Mr. Schumer?
Well, yes. What's wrong is what he doesn't say. What he doesn't say is there are lots of things that can be done, including a lot of the things that he's mentioned. But there are other things, too. And where the NRA makes a fatal mistake is they are so extreme that they treat Mr. Koresh the same way they would treat the legitimate sportsman who wants a hunting rifle. Let me give you an example. Right here I have here in my pocket, this is the 50-millimeter bullets that we believe, these shells that we believe Mr. Koresh has. The NRA opposes making them illegal. This is the 9-millimeter weapon that our police have. Now, you can do all the arresting after the fact, and that's what will happen to Koresh. We have to stop that. We need a Brady bill. If there was a Brady bill, every time Koresh or one of his followers went in to buy a weapon, the local police would be notified. They were not. Over and over and over again, the NRA opposes the thing I mentioned about taggants, identifying little bits of information and gunpowder and explosives. The NRA has opposed. And furthermore, I have to tell you, Bob, I'm chairman of the Crime and Criminal Justice Committee. I've led the fight, as you know, Wayne, for more funding for the criminal justice system, for getting tough laws, for getting a death penalty. And I never hear the NRA coming to lobby us on that, only on not tightening up the gun laws, which any rational American family sitting around their living room knows we have to do.
Congressman, you sit there and you, as chairman of the crime subcommittee, and take tens of thousands of dollars from the trial lawyers who are opposed to any type of meaningful criminal justice reform, and then you point a finger at the National Rifle Association. Let me tell you something. Bill Clinton one of the first things they're recommending is a $300 million cut in prison construction. When you listen to the Clinton administration, they use buzzwords like community alternatives. That means felons on the street. One of the major problems...
This is the first time you're lobbying me on this, Wayne. The NRA has never lobbied me once on this. And only when there becomes a national demand to do something about the terrible guns, the domestic violence we have on our street. Do we hear it? And it's just here on television.
We're giving you real solutions. All you ever talk about is guns, 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 banning guns from honest people. When are we going to hear you say lock up criminals, fund the criminal justice system?
Read the crime bill that I wrote.
Until I raised it, all you were talking about today was gun laws.
All right, let me just interject something here.
This is Virginia. On guns, and where are you?
No, it's on criminals, and that's our difference.
Are you against putting taggants in explosives? Let's say we lock up every criminal, and we still are going to have... Are you still against that?
We are in favor of doing something about this criminal justice system and putting people in jail. Let me ask you this. Are you in favor of computerizing the mental health records of people into a national computer bank?
You bet I am.
Well, can we join hands on that and go to Capitol Hill right now? Will you shake on it with me? Because last year you guys were against it.
All right, let me just ask them. Virginia's passed what seems to me a fairly mild law. It says you can only limit people to buying one gun a month. Would you favor that?
The fact is, it doesn't stop criminals. We're in favor of no guns ever for criminals. We're in favor of prosecuting felons in possession. It's not a question of what's wrong with it. It's what good will it do. We ought to be prosecuting violent felons, putting them in jail. We're not.
I don't disagree with that.
Well, but we never do it. But no one does it. No one does it.
Let me tell you, one gun a month
would
prevent... Can I
yes,
please get this point out?
Go ahead.
One gun a month would prevent... It wouldn't end everything. But right now we have people from New York. They go down to a gun shop in Virginia. They buy 50 or 60 guns. They put them on the back of a flatbed truck and sell them on the streets of the ghettos of our city. If they could only buy one, they couldn't end the violence. They could do a lot less damage. NRA has vehemently opposed that law, whereas if you ask most gun owners, therefore, the legitimate sportsman doesn't have to buy more than one gun a month.
Let me talk about the Brady Bill for a minute. You know, you offer that as a cure-all solution for everything. 2/3 of the United States already lives under a Brady Bill type law.
That's true.
All the high crime areas that do. You're sitting here telling the nation that would do something about crime when basically it would make hunters wait in Wyoming. When are we going to do something about your court system in New York City? And I brought it right here. Here's 2 of your federal court judges up there. 230,000 cases, 0 justice. All of them plea bargained down, put back out on the street.
We're trying at the federal level
but
to
you
stop
never
the plea
do
bargaining.
anything.
But let me say this. Let me just say this about what has been mentioned here. The NRA opposes the one gun a month law. The NRA says New York City has a high rate of guns and murder. Yes, do you know where 96% of the guns from New York City come from? Not from New York, where there's a tough gun control law, but from states like Virginia, Florida, Georgia, where there's none. The only way we're going to prevail, Bob, is if we have a national law. And one more thing, he says the hunter in Wyoming doesn't want to wait. 80% under Gallup poll, not an NRA poll, not a Chuck Schumer poll, of the gun owners support the Brady Bill.
I'll give you just a very quick response.
We're going to hang a big sign from our building next week. You know how they kept President Clinton focused during the campaign? It's the economy, stupid, on the point. We're going to hang a huge banner from our building saying it's the criminals, stupid.
You know what
we want to keep these politicians focused on taking criminals off the street and not preventing honest citizens from using guns to defend themselves from criminals that they let go.
It's the guns, stupid. It's the guns
it's
and
criminals
the
with
it's
guns
both.
That you won't take off the street.
I want to take the guns off the street.
Well, we want to take the criminals.
We want both.
All right, gentlemen, I think that probably is a good place to let it lie. A lot more comment coming on this subject for the rest of this year, that's for sure. We'll be back with a final comment in just a second.